Another thing that we're thinking about is the year ahead and what we're going to read and where we're going to obtain our books. So my name is Rosie. I work at Readers Books in Sonoma, California. We're an independent new and used bookstore that we try to cater to all tastes. In fact, the motto is a gathering place for readers of all ages. And I'm lucky enough to have gotten my job because of Gia.
I'm Gia, obviously, and I'm currently a professor in North Carolina, but I used to work at Readers, and I still order most of my books from Readers. And I have missed Readers a lot, so these videos are a way for me to kind of reconnect with Readers and remind myself of that great bookstore that I don't get to go inside very much anymore.
It's okay. You'd have to wear a mask.
Mask anyway, right?
Do curbside pickup.
I mean, I do curbside pickup, but the curb is
It's like a lot further away.
the post office does the pickup and the drop off.
Bless the post office right now, though, right?
Definitely.
So anyway, the thing that has been on my mind is reading resolutions because I think both of us made when we made opposite choices with our reading resolutions, and I'd love to sort of check in with us in June or July because my personal habit with resolutions is like maybe May, and that's just the end. But I'd love to like actually continue a resolution, and maybe this kind of accountability would help. Um, and then I was thinking about why we do resolutions, especially with reading. So I think yours is a very interesting resolution. So you can go first.
So last year I tried to go for quantity. I tried to read a lot of books. And I made my reading resolution in July. And I decided that the best plan was to try to read 52 books between July and December. I came in too short, which I still think is pretty impressive for the time I gave myself, and start thinking about that. So for 2021, I have selected 12 incredibly long books. My only parameter was it had to be over 400 pages, and I think my smallest book is 500 some, so they're long. And I'm going to read, my plan is to just read 12 books in 2021. I'm going to give myself a month for each book and read the whole thing. But I also wanted to take the time to read some of those long books that I've kind of skipped in my lifetime. So my list is a combination of new and some 19th century books. I didn't want to just do 19th century books. I study 19th century literature, so I read a lot of that literature anyway, and I wanted to kind of expand out from there. So I'm going to be attempting to read 12, I'm calling them big fats, 12 big fats here. The folks at Readers were kind enough to go out into the stacks and try and find the fattest books they could. So some of the more difficult ones to get through, I'm blaming on them.
But I think it should be noted that some of them we just looked at it and went, well, this is the longest one we could find. There was no other like literary recommendation things. It was just like, damn, this is a long book.
Yep. And I didn't look at reviews. I didn't do any of that. So some of these books I'm going in without knowing anything about the books. I don't know what they're about. I don't know the authors, nothing. So it's going to be quite the adventure. This is not a reading goal I've ever set myself before. My reading goals have always been about quantity and reading lots and lots and lots. So I'm actually kind of excited to slow down and to really linger over. Well, I can't linger too much because I only get 4 weeks to read these things, but linger a little bit over some of these really big books that I don't know. I don't make the time to read anymore, so I'm really excited to give this a shot.
Do you want to talk about your D's?
So the kind of second half of my reading goal is to throw myself a grand tea the last weekend of each month. And these teas are going to be themed on whatever book I read. 2-3 recipes for some kind of dish that would be served at a tea or as part of a kind of dessert or light meal, something like that. I throw myself a little tea party and kind of reminisce about the book that I just finished and think about what did I learn from it, what did I like about it, kind of what, you know, what was the point of reading it, right? And really think about those kind of things. So I also think I don't take a lot of time to reflect on the books I read. These videos are kind of the only time I get to reflect really deeply on the books that I've read for pleasure. So kind of carving out a weekend every month to sit and think about these books and experience, you know, some of the foods that they might have eaten or something like that. I think it's gonna be really fun, and it's gonna help me cook new things, and it's gonna really help me explore new cultural foods and stuff like that. So I'm really excited about these teas and researching recipes for them and stuff like that.
I like the idea that you're giving yourself concrete reward, because that's what always gets me about reading goals, especially for non-professionals. Because for me and for you, reading is a part of our jobs. Like we have to read, and we have to read a lot, and we have to, you know, use that in our jobs. So any book that I read is useful for my job, and that's partly why I read it. But people who set like Goodreads resolutions are always fascinating to me, because what do you get out of your reading, and structuring your reading that way? Like, do you just get bragging rights? Like, what are you giving yourself for doing this?
Something like Goodreads really does kind of foster this. You have to read more, you have to set yourself big goals, and I think that's partially because it's a community thing, right? You're kind of comparing yourself to others and thinking about what your friends are reading or something like that. um and I think I don't know, there's almost a sort of shame in just reading 12 books in a year, right? Especially if you consider yourself a reader.
Yeah.
These reading goals, like you point out, they often feel kind of untethered from our lives, right? They're just kind
Yeah.
of there, and we kind of keep ourselves to the goal or we don't, depending on how we're feeling. Um, and I think pairing a kind of reward like you know, like a tea party with my reading is really helping me kind of get through these books. Well, this is month one, so heaven knows what the next few months are going to look like. But there's a sort of excitement at the end, right? There's like some sort of end result. I agree with you, right? A lot of these reading goals feel, I don't know, they just feel really abstract, right? And really kind of theoretical.
Which, and then a lot of it ties into like what is a real book and what
Mm-hmm.
counts for your goal. And I like that you've picked them out already, because then you can't like, oh, I guess this doesn't count. It's like, no, this is what I want to do, and you can see it in front of you. I
Yeah.
like that idea.
For me especially, I thought for a little while that I would just leave it open, right? And each month I would just choose a book, and that would be that. And I realized that if I tried to do that, my goal would peter out immediately, right? I might make it through January, but then I would never pick my February book.
Mhm.
And so I went ahead and picked the books, and I've already decided which month I'm going to read each of the books in. And I'm actually going to hold myself to that. I can be a very fickle reader, and I don't normally do this, and I would never encourage anyone else to do this, but I really want to dig into that feeling of maybe not being interested in a book, or maybe not getting the same kind of fast-paced pleasure out of it that I might get out of a different book. And I want to try and kind of soldier through that, because I think there's something to be said for that kind of endurance test, right? Like there's something to be gained from setting yourself what feels like a really insurmountable goal, and then doing everything you can to accomplish it. And I will only ever do this once, right? This is only going to be my 2021 goal. I will never
1
do
year.
this again. So I'm excited. I'm a little nervous, because I think I like the idea of checking in, right? Because I think this is a goal that I could abandon very, very quickly. So I think it'll be exciting to check in and see where stuff is in a couple months. Um, but it's okay. I think one of the really interesting side effects of this goal is I'm learning that I don't have time set aside in the day to read, which has been a fascinating realization. I genuinely thought that this would be my kind of lunchtime and afternoon activities. And I'm finding that currently lunchtime is the only time my husband and I have to talk during the day, because he teaches public school online now. And I teach college online. And so lunchtime is kind of a time for us to chat. And then because my husband is teaching from home, he's talking a lot, right? He has to talk to his students and give his lectures and stuff like that. So there isn't like a quiet place for me to read in the house during the day. And so really, really fascinating kind of side effect of this reading resolution has been trying to figure out when I can actually read. So it's been interesting. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Anyway, so my goal is the opposite of your goal in several ways, because you're doing 1 year and 1 book a month. And this has been kind of my goal for the last, I'm going to say 5 years, has been basically this goal, although I added one twist. And it's partly based on the fact that if you are a judge on the Newbery panel, you read about 200 books a year. And I went, well, that seems like a pretty good baseline for what I should be doing with my life. So I've come really close, but this last year was the least amount of books that I've read since I've kept track. It was something like 33.
Wow.
So it's like such a dramatic drop. And obviously 2020 is not a great year to be judging yourself on. Like, I know what I was doing. I was making masks. I was freaking out. I was reading like 200 pages of the news every day. So that being said, my goal for many years has been, well, basically it's been 1 middle grade, 1 YA a week, has been my goal since 2016. So I've modified it a little bit. My goal this year is 2 middle grade, 2 YA, and 2 adult books a month, which is 6 a month, which sounds like a lot, but it kind of isn't when you get down to it. Just throwing the adult books in there reminds me a little bit about what you said about taking your time. I think it's good to balance that out with a little bit more adult fiction or adult nonfiction. So kind of like you, what I did to actually do this goal, instead of just say, oh, I have a goal and then not make a strategy for doing the goal, is that I can't reread anything unless I've read 50 pages of a new book in a day, which has worked out really well, because if you read about 50 pages, that's about enough to either keep reading or know that this book isn't for you and you can just set it aside. So because of that, I am almost done with my goal for January.
So proud of you. The exact opposite of me.
Pile. What I've been doing is kind of stacking up things that I think are, that are the good choices, and then picking them. And then if I don't like them, I'll put them aside and grab something else from the pile to do that. I think it's just a simple little switch of what I think about with reading.
If you end up like ahead of your goal, are you going to count that towards the next month, or is that just cream on top?
Just cream on top. Nice. So 10 books in January, then I still have to do 6 in February. And the same split applies. So I'm trying, like, I just read a middle grade, so I'll read a young adult, so I'll have 3 of each.
So kind of always be rotating through the 3 categories.
Exactly. Yeah. So nice. So that way, well, first of all, you can't confuse them. And then also it just balances out a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's nice. And I keep track of this with a spreadsheet. I have had the spreadsheet since 2016 with all the information on each book that I have read since then. I showed my spreadsheet to people and they usually look at me like, you are nuts. And I'm like, well, like, how is this different than Goodreads? It's just my personal spreadsheet. People just don't like spreadsheets.
I think it's because so many of us can't set up spreadsheets. So we see a well set up spreadsheet and we instantly shut down.
But I love my spreadsheet. I have all the old ones that I can go back to.
I always write the date when I finish a book. And I started a book late last year, and I was like flipping through it because I saw something was underlined, and I was like, that usually means I've read it before. That's really weird. And I flipped to the last page and I had indeed read it before. I had no memory of this book at all. And I just feel like a spreadsheet would help with that a little bit. Like,
I think what made me think of doing the resolutions wasn't just your big fat. It was that Jude made a sign for the front of the store that says we're resolved to read and we can help. And I was like, how would I help with this? Kids don't make reading goals because kids, I don't know, they have better lives, I think. And
They don't have to pay bills.
yeah, they just read what they want to read.
Yeah.
Like for some kids, their reading goal is deal with whatever the teacher makes them read, and then also there's a new Dog Man out in March,
Yeah.
and that's a wonderful way to live life. But I was thinking about how resolutions to read are a very adult thing to do and a very admirable thing to do, but one that I'm not often a lot of help with because my goal is very professional. In our worldly wise January beginning, do you have any advice for people picking books or starting books for resolutions?
I think it's really, really important to at least start with something that you're very excited about. I think a lot of us think of goals and resolutions in particular as very difficult and as drudgery, right? This is something I have to change about myself. This is something I have to fix. This is something I have to work on. And so it becomes something very negative in our minds. And so for me, I picked a book that Rosie, you have loved for years and years now, and I know it's really important to you and your husband. And so I've been really excited to read it, but I've never had the time, right? I've never had the time to just sit and read this very long book. So I was really careful to put that as my first book. So I'd be super excited about it. And I didn't pick some of the books that I think are going to be really challenging for me. In some ways, the way we think about resolutions, it would make more sense to start with something that we find really difficult, right? Like, I think that is a really difficult way to start out, especially a reading challenge, especially if you have a set reading list, right? If you want to read these specific books, start with ones you're really, really excited about and be just really, really patient and gentle with yourself, right? This is really, really hard work. It's really hard to make that time for reading, especially in this particular moment where a lot of us are kind of living on top of our family members in ways we don't normally do. I mean, normally my house is silent from 8:30 a.m. till 6 p.m., right? My husband is away at school teaching. And so in a normal year, it would be very easy for me to read for a couple of hours in the afternoon. But I don't have that time. And so I'm having to kind of adapt to that. So I think choose fun, exciting things to start with and be really, really kind and gentle with yourself because reading goals are really, really hard.
I think I second the being kind to yourself, but I also, especially for quantity goal, really advocate just you don't have to finish things.
Yeah.
They might not count towards my list. I think I started 6 or 7 more books than I have finished. But I didn't want to finish them. I didn't need to finish them. Some of them weren't worth the time. And I think having that kind of flexibility with a quantity goal is especially important, which is why I didn't assign myself books. I went, here's your possibilities, and pick from these. And if those don't work, you have 5 bookcases to choose from.
And that isn't a failing, right? You're still
Exactly.
meeting your goals. You're just doing it in a way that really suits you and is kind of gentle and patient to your goals.
So I guess what we're thinking about in many ways is why are you doing this resolution and how can you be kind to yourself while you do it?
And I think it's really important to be really reflective about your reading goals and to think a lot about what is it you want to accomplish and why, right? And so I think it's a lot more effective to be really reflective on your goal and why you're reading and to choose your books with some sort of sense of those goals, right? Why am I reading this particular book?
Like why do I want to do this? It's a good question. And it's probably why book clubs and something like Goodreads or conversations like ours are so important, that you can have company, if not accountability, but you might have company,
Yeah.
which is nice because we have opposite goals, but we're still going to talk about them. So
yeah,
it'll work out.
If you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. We're just getting started, so if you subscribe, you have a better chance of keeping up with our videos. One of our kind of I can't say that word. One of our secondary goals for this year is posting more often. So we are hoping to do a video every week, every 2 weeks. So if you subscribe, you'll have a better chance of seeing those videos. And we're excited for future conversations.
And you can reach Readers Books at our website, which is www.readersbooks.com. You can also use that space to sign up for the newsletter, which is sent out once a week with an essay from our owner and occasionally one from me when I have time. And phone us. It's 707-939-1779. We hope to see you soon. Thanks.